Hi everybody, in this video we'll talk about the E2 visa, the investor visa, some changes that are happening in 2020, how to apply for the E2 visa during COVID, and also future legislation that will impact the E2 visa and maybe open a path for a green card for these investors. So what are you waiting for? I'll see you on the other side. Hi everybody, and welcome to another video at our channel. In this video we'll specifically talk about the E2 visa, the investor visa, how to apply for this visa, what are the requirements, and specific changes and things to look for when you apply for this visa now during this COVID situation where embassies are closed and there's so many restrictions on people to come to the United States. Before we talk about that, if you're here for the first time, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Click that bell to be notified so you don't miss any of our videos. We produce videos every single week. And also give us that big like so YouTube will be able to show this video to more people just like you. My name is Sapochnick and I'm an immigration attorney located in San Diego, California, and I help investors and clients who are looking to start companies in the United States from all over the US and people to come here from all over the world. So let's talk about the E2 visa. The E2 visa is a perfect visa classifications for those immigrants that specifically want to come to the United States and start a business. The E2 visa is available for immigrants who are interested to come to the United States, live and work, but specifically start their own business. It's currently the perfect entrepreneur startup visa that is available for immigrants looking to invest and start a small business. So let's look at some of the requirements that you need to be able to get this E2 visa. Number one, you have to be a national of a treaty country. So on the State Department, we can link in the description of this video a link to the State Department, and they have a list of all the countries that are part of a treaty with the United States to be able to apply for the E2 visa. Some of these countries could be Mexico, Canada, a lot of the European countries, Japan, Australia, and many other countries. But it's important to know, before you try to apply for an E2 visa, make sure you check that your country is actually on the list. The second requirement is that you must have invested or in the process of investing in a business. What does that mean? It means that you have to show that you have control of your money, that the money actually came from your either savings, or you sold a house, or you got a gift, whatever that is, you have to show the source of the funds. Also, the funds that once you be able to show the source of your funds, that money has to be at risk. What does it mean? It means that you actually have to invest. Either you start a business or you buy a business, you actually have to take a step forward and actually go forward with the investment. So either you will purchase something, or if you're starting a new business, you will spend some of the money that you brought to buy equipment or hire people. But you have to do something to show that the money that you brought is going to be at risk by using it. Also, it is important that you actually have to start the business. You cannot just tell the government that you will do something in the future. You actually have to start the business. So whether you are going to sign the lease or actually hire employees or whatever that is, those actions must be taken before you actually apply for the E2 visa. And that's a really important point to understand. You also have to be in a position to direct the business with your skills. So it means that you cannot be a passive investor. You have to show to the government that you're going to be involved in the business. Either you will be the owner or the manager, and we have to show that you signed the documents. The investor has to be physically involved. It cannot be just a passive income or passive investment. Also, it is important to show that you have some experience to run the business. So for example, if you're going to start a restaurant and you have no cooking experience, maybe you can show that you have management experience, and that would be that's how you can show that you're actually able to run a business like that. But whatever that is, you have to tie your expertise and skills to be able actually to get the E2 visa. When we say a substantial amount, there is no specific amount defined by law. In our experience, we have had cases that got an E2 visa with as little as $20,000, and of course the amounts can go up to millions. The key is that you have to show how this money is invested. The idea is that the amount of money depends on the kind of business that you do, depends on the state where you're going to be setting up your business. There's so many factors. Therefore, the government does not give a set amount. It has to be a reasonable amount depending on the business that you do. So for example, if you're starting an accounting business, you may need less money than if you start a restaurant. So again, it has to be reasonable. But what is most important is that you cannot just have money sitting in a bank account. It has to be money that is used for the purpose of the business, and that's really important. When you're applying for the E2 visa, it is really important to show the source of your funds. So for example, if you're getting funds from a gift, or from investment, or from inheritance, whatever that is, it is really important to document the source of your funds before you're able to bring these funds to the United States. Because if the source of the funds is not something we can trace, then we're not able to use that as a legitimate source, and most likely the visa will be denied. So be very careful and make sure you have clear records as to where the funds were obtained and how you obtained those funds. Another requirement of the E2 is that the business cannot be marginal. But what does that mean? That means that the business cannot only provide income for you and your family. There has to be something more than that. And the reason that the government does that is because they want to make sure that the investors are going to be able not only to sustain themselves, but will have some sort of a future for their business. Otherwise, they could become a public charge on the U.S. government, and they are not excited about it at all. So how do you show the government that your business is not going to be marginal? Typically, we do a 5-year business plan. We're going to show how the business is going to grow, how many employees are going to be hired, and what is the potential of this business. And this is one of the best ways to show that the business is not going to be marginal. So once again, this is some of the basic elements of an E2 visa. We have to make sure that you're part of a treaty. We make sure that you have to document the source of the funds. The investment has to be substantial depending on the kind of the business. And of course, the business cannot be marginal. You have to prove to the US government that you have a long-term plan, at least a 5-year business plan for your business. So what's happening right now with E2 visas? So right now, as you know, a lot of the embassies are closed and are not issuing visas on a regular basis. There are so many immigrants that are not able to enter the United States as visitors and many other visas. In fact, we have the proclamations, we have the travel bans, and it's just creating a lot of issues for business people that are interested to come and invest in the United States. But the good news is that there are certain exceptions. The good news is that the exceptions to these proclamations and the travel bans is that if the entry of the immigrant is in the national interest of the United States, then that could be an exception. And the E2 visa is a perfect example of that. This is a visa that creates jobs. The investors are bringing funding and funds to the United States, and so it's much easier to show that an entry of an E2 investor is in the national interest of the United States. And if you remember, in the beginning of the video, I mentioned the requirements that the E-visa cannot be marginal, and the business plan and all the things that we need to show. Well, these are the perfect tools for us to use when we apply for the national interest exception. We'll use the business plan and all the other things that the E2 visa investor is doing to allow them to get that exception and enter the United States quickly without being subject to any of these restrictions, and being able to get an appointment on a priority basis as well. There are many embassies that already are resuming the appointments for E2 visa applicants without the need for any exception. But for those embassies that are subject to the bans and they're not willing to open appointments, it is very possible to request that exception because you're applying for an E2 visa, and it's really important to remember that. Another exciting thing with the E2 visa is that we're hoping that in the next several months, the E2 Visa Improvement Act that was introduced last year will finally go back and advance into law somehow. The E2 Visa Improvement Act includes two provisions. One provision which will allow E2 visa holders that have been in the US for 10 years or more to apply for their green card and eventually citizenship. And the other provision is to allow for work authorization for children of E2 visa dependents that currently are not allowed to get there, and to extend their dependency status until the age of 26. Right now it's limited to 21. So we're hoping that this bill is going to come back and hopefully be introduced again and become law sometime next year. We'll see. So we're hoping that these changes are definitely going to come. They're much needed because a lot of investors who have been here for so many years are looking for a path for a green card, and this legislation will not only encourage more people to use the E2 visa, but they're also going to see the future with the E2 converting to a green card, which is something that currently is not in place. And finally, we definitely see more and more people applying for the E2 visa, since now the EB-5 increased to almost $1 million. A lot of investors who are not able to invest that much money are choosing the E2 visa as another option to live and work in the United States. So once again, if you're an investor and you're a national of one of the treaty countries with the United States for an investor visa, now is a perfect time to apply for an E2 visa. Landlords are looking for new tenants, leases are cheap, our interest rates are super low, and this is a perfect time to find yourself a location and a business and start your American dream in the United States right now. If you have any questions about the E2 visa, make sure you post them in the comments here. And if you're here for the first time, make sure you subscribe to our channel, click this bell to be notified so you won't miss any of our videos. Once again, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video.